Breaking news in the NFL, Cincinnati Bengals defensive end Trey Hendrickson is not happy with the way that contract talks are going, and he is not shy about saying so. Today, he told reporters that he will not play next season under his current deal, which is set to pay him a little over $16 million. He also said that the stalled negotiations with the team have gotten, quote, personal. Hendrickson was named first-team All-Pro this past season for the first time in his career when he led the league with 17.5 sacks. Let's welcome in our own Lige Douzable for more on this. So, Lige, do you see a way for the Bengals to salvage this relationship they have with Hendrickson?
Yeah, JD, do the right thing and pay the man what he's worth.
Pay the man his money.
There's a clear... Yeah, exactly. There's a clear market for what Trey Hendrickson should be making. When you look at Danielle Hunter, both him and Trey Hendrickson are 30 years old. The Houston Texans did a really good job making sure that Danielle Hunter wasn't going into the last year of his deal being paid underwhelmingly. They gave him a $35.6 million extension for 1 year because that's what the market is for the top rushers. JD, you talked about it. Trey Hendrickson, you see it right there. 17.5 sacks last season. 2023, 17.5 sacks. There is nobody in the NFL over the last 2 years, JD, that has more sacks than that guy on our screen right now. Matter of fact, he has 5 more sacks than the guy that's in second place behind him, who is T.J. Watt. So when you look at what Trey Hendrickson has done, there's a clear-cut market for what he should be making in the NFL. I go back to what their executive vice president said a little while ago, Katie Blackburn. She said, it's on Trey Hendrickson to be happy at some point, and that Hendrickson should be happy at certain rates that maybe he doesn't think he'd be happy at. Well, I'd like to tell Ms. Blackburn something. The market is the market. What rates are you talking about? We just talked about Danielle Hunter making $35.6 million. They're the same age, and yet Trey Hendrickson has outpaced him when it comes to affecting and getting after the quarterback. The Bengals have handled this awfully, and they need to do the right thing because we saw last year, you can have an explosive offense averaging over 27 points a game. It doesn't matter if your defense can't slow anybody down. He was their best defender last year. You best believe they need him if they plan on going to the playoffs this year.
So how do you realistically see this playing out? What do you think is going to actually happen?
I think eventually the Bengals and Trey Hendrickson will meet somewhere in the middle. Honestly, this could end up being a scenario where if they feel like the number's too high, maybe they trade him away for like a 5th or 6th round draft pick and that new team extends him. But if you're the Bengals, right, you re-signed your top 2 receivers. Joe Burrow is under contract. You have admirations to go to the playoffs and go further in the playoffs. Let's not forget, in 2021, they went to the Super Bowl. In 2022, they went to the AFC Championship game. They're trying to get back to where they were at, and they need Trey Hendrickson to do this. So I know the Bengals brass would love to get a deal worked out, but again, the market is already set on what Trey Hendrickson should make. I don't understand why the Bengals continue to drag their feet. They did the same thing with T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. It cost them a lot more money. Now they're doing the same thing with their best defensive star in Trey Hendrickson. I do believe ultimately, though, these two will meet in the middle somewhere and the deal will get done because without Trey Hendrickson, they're going to have a same issue they had last year with that defense.
You know who else is hoping that this deal gets done? It's their first-round draft pick in Shamar Stewart. He came out saying that he plans on being around Hendrickson to learn from him as much as possible. Does this make sense a little bit more with the way that they went in the draft now?
And JD, this is why I'm scratching my head, because they went with Shamar Stewart, who I love, but is the biggest boom or bust prospect in this draft. So you're asking a lot for a guy that didn't really have production in college. I believe only 4.5 sacks in 4 years at Texas A&M, but has out-of-this-world traits. You're asking a lot of him if Trey Hendrickson isn't there to come in and be the guy from day one to affect the quarterback. It took a guy that has a similar skill set as Shamar Stewart 2 years ago and Miles Murphy, and he just hasn't developed. So right now you got 2 former first-round picks that you're going to be banking on if Trey Hendrickson is not in the building, and both of these guys are boom or bust prospects. So if you're the Bengals, and again, you have playoff admirations, stop playing around, stop dragging your feet. The market has been set. pay Trey Hendrickson his money because he deserves it.
And if they don't, say this just does not work out, what are some potential landing spots? Where do you like him when it comes to other teams in the league?
I think the Washington Commanders make a lot of sense. I was surprised. Me and Pete Prisco talked about this the other day, that they didn't attack the edge group in the draft or via free agency as well. They lost Dante Fowler to the Cowboys. He returns there. Trey Hendrickson, you see it, back-to-back 17-plus sack seasons. This is instant pass rush off the edge. And if you're the Commanders, you're a team that's vying to dethrone the NFC East and Super Bowl champs, the Philadelphia Eagles, who are in your division. So Trey Hendrickson to the Commanders makes a lot of sense because, you know this, JD, if you don't have to play your quarterback, he's under a rookie deal, you can allocate some money to some other positions. Well, right now, Jayden Daniels is only going into his second year. Best believe after his third year, he's probably going to be the highest paid quarterback in the NFL. So I believe the Washington Commanders can afford to make this move for Trey Hendrickson. But again, I'd be leery if I'm the Cincinnati Bengals because the grass isn't always greener. You let Trey Hendrickson go out the building, you may have the same issue you had on defense last year.
Lige Douzable with his breaking news in the NFL. Lige, thank you so much, and we will obviously keep an eye on what happens. Schedule has been released. International games have been announced. The Minnesota Vikings will have back-to-back international games. They'll play the Steelers in Dublin in Week 4, followed by a game against the Browns in Week 5. Some other international action, including the Colts and the Falcons in Berlin in Week 10, the Dolphins and Commanders in Madrid in Week 11, and there are 2 more matchups in London with the Jets and the Broncos in Week 6 and the Jags and Rams in Week 7. That was a lot to get through. Charles Davis joining us now. So we have 7 international games spanning over 5 countries. We have Dublin, London, Berlin, Madrid, Sao Paulo. Charles, what's your take on just the league's commitment to this global expansion?
Jenny, I think you hit the perfect word, commitment, because I think when all this began back in the 80s, when we started to take teams overseas and playing, and maybe even in the 70s, I can't go back quite that far and have it exact. But when we were doing it, remember, those were all preseason games, right? Those were all one-off type of ball games. Hey, let's take this out and see what it does. And then we saw the crowds. We saw the response. We saw what was going on. But we had to figure out if we're going to spread our game, American football, globally, people have to see how it counts, when it counts, the best that we're going to send over. And then when we started to send the games and they were regular season, they still weren't great games, were they, Jenny? I was over there once for a ball game, and I had a number of people in London tell me, we'd like to see some better games here. And after a while, the league got the message, and some of our more traditionally powerful teams have started to make the trek. Now it is part of the whole fabric. And I think the manifestation of it all, Jenny, the Olympics coming up in 2020 in Los Angeles, flag football. Now we're seeing it all over the world. It may not be totally padded out yet, but this is a start. And